This is Issues Pane Nyaya, a Chengeto Zimbabwe initiative supported by I Am Swedish Development Partner. Issues Pane Nyaya seeks to challenge the status quo on various social issues.
Good evening, Zimbabwe, and welcome back to another episode of Issues Pane Nyaya, the program where we endeavor to challenge the status quo on various social issues. My name is Rejoice, and tonight's episode is sponsored by I Am Swedish Development Partner. The National Gallery of Zimbabwe is the key institution in the visual arts industry and has consistently held an annual exhibition for women. This year's exhibition was inspired by this year's theme for Women's Day, which was #Press for Progress, and it echoed the emphasis of the women's constituency in Zimbabwe, which is all for women's participation, women's capacity, as well as women's ability in all spheres. The exhibition particularly spoke to the ability and capacity of women to exhibit work which matches, or in some cases even surpasses, the work that is often exhibited by men. I had the honor of officially opening this year's exhibition and was awed by the quality of the work on display in the National Gallery of Zimbabwe. The stories being told there were amazing, and the detail was so good and so deep that I left there with a sense of there is so much that can be told through the arts. We have one of the ladies who were exhibiting their work in this year's exhibition, and her name is Olivia. I will allow her to introduce herself and tell us a bit about who she is. Good evening, Olivia, and welcome to Issues Pane Nyaya.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. So I am Olivia Botha, and I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. I studied at Michaela School of Fine Arts, and my practice is basically a performance-based video work, but I also focus on sculptural installation and just creating an environment that people can enter into and really experience. And my work has been shown in Bulawayo before, which is where I did my residency program earlier this year.
Why the interest on Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe, of course, is the neighboring country of South Africa, and the two countries have a lot that they are constantly in dialogue with. Coming to Zimbabwe was an interesting process for me as a South African, coming to Zimbabwe and experiencing the country and its people.
Do you want to tell us the story behind the silence bleeding? Do you want to share that?
Of course. Silence bleeding talks about a very important issue that needs to be spoken about more and more freely without any shame or embarrassment or stigma attached to it, and that is menstrual health. And for me, it seems to be like a big issue because, you know, a lot of young women and a lot of young girls are actually not going to school because of the lack of access to sanitary pads. And there's so much stigma and embarrassment and taboo attached to this topic. It's like you're almost not allowed to speak about it publicly, which I feel is like, it's crazy. Why this deep embarrassment, which should be something that should be celebrated. As women, we are able to give birth, you know, and create life. This is part of the natural biological process. Girls should be celebrated and put, you know, like, really encouraged because of this. It shouldn't have that stigma attached to it. So this was for me a very big issue that needed to be addressed. You know, it doesn't only affect third world and developing countries. It affects everybody, every single woman currently, you know. There's actually a luxury tax put onto sanitary products, which I just can't believe it. It doesn't make sense to me. Why, if basic commodities like bread and sugar and, you know, all these commodities that don't have tax, why should there be a tax on the basic healthcare products for young girls and women?
Well, it's viewed as a luxury to use sanitary towels and to use pads and tampons and things like that. Yeah. Have you found that this is the same across Africa or even globally?
Definitely, of course. I mean, there's studies that show that roughly just under 140,000 female pupils missed school in the United Kingdom alone in 2017 because of the lack of access. This is not only a problem for the third world country, it's a global issue, really. And specifically in Zimbabwe, I've read articles where young women resort to using bark, tree leaves, even cow dung in order to go to school. Which
And I can't even imagine the use of cow dung, for example,
Exactly.
and the resultant subsequent mental or health issues that come from it.
self-esteem
It's- yeah.
and infections, and just you're completely excluded. You feel like you can't participate, you can't perform the same way as a boy would or a male student. So, why is this the case? If you can hand out condoms, which I am completely for, like have safe sex, but then also hand out pads, there should be a way for female students to have the same equal basic education.
You talk about, and we'll come back to the education issue, you talk about silence bleeding.
Yes.
What is that saying? The silence bleeding, that whole title that you've given to your work.
So for me, the silence really is about not having the discussion, the silence around the stigma. And the bleeding is, of course, the process, the physical process. And it's it goes deeper than that as well. You can really think about the symbolism that is attached to that. It's something that we need to just really focus on. And if you walk into the installation as well, it's a video and sound installation. So you walk into this dark space. There's it's like a cloth, a fitted sheet that's suspended almost onto a washing line. So it's almost making this, stain very visible and not in your face, but you can't avoid
it was in your face.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
And it's putting it on display. It's in this dark space, and you walk in, and there's the sound of the womb, inside the womb. There's a heartbeat. There's also sounds of, the instruments that I was using, clicking against glass against glass. And it really does become quite disturbing if you're in this space for the period of the video, which plays on loop as well. And it's a figure in the center that's covered in a bed sheet, and there's a blood drop that's slowly starting to spread and engulf the figure, completely making it bloody and red. And then on either side you've got, almost also references to the idea of washing a stain off, but it doesn't really ever go away.
No,
It
it
stays.
doesn't.
It stays. It really does stain. And that is the idea, is just to talk about the stain and see that we all have the stain, and it's something that we wear, and we should be able to discuss it and actually change things.
And the stain goes beyond, as I was watching it, and as I'm thinking about it now, I'm actually getting goosebumps again. It goes beyond just the stain in the
Definitely.
inner person, because if you're then unable to be safe and to retain your dignity and to maintain cleanliness and to retain your health during that process, it becomes quite daunting, I think.
Yeah.
And is that the image? Because the imagery is it's just, whew. Yeah, is that what you were trying to put across in that work?
How can we allow girls to go to school with cow dung? That is, it almost feels like it's a basic human right violation. How can you do that? So I'm very interested and really trying to promote the idea of alternative ways of looking into using reusable sanitary pads, which really doesn't seem to be that difficult process. So for me, that's the next step. I'm trying to find out how we can, as a community, start up this project. And I know there's already projects like that, but I feel like it could even be better and more. You only need 5 reusable sanitary pads a year. That's okay. People can, we can do that. But going to the shop every month, trying to buy sanitary pads, for some people, a lot of people, that's not possible. A lot of women, young girls and women, resort to using rags and all kinds of unsanitary objects to try and deal with this process, which is, again, it just puts such a shame and and damper on the whole female body, which we celebrated.
And what has been the response? What was the response, for example, at the exhibition last week? Is it still up? Is the work
It's
still
still
up?
up,
So it's
yes.
still up at the National Gallery for those listeners who are interested in going to see. But what has been the response from visitors who've
Very,
looked?
very good responses, very powerful responses. I mean, people are really starting to talk about it. And also, when I started this specific work, there was almost a little bit of like my own barriers that I had to overcome, and thought, you know, I'm also feeling a little bit shy talking about this right now publicly. And then I was like, well, this is exactly why I'm making the work. We shouldn't feel so ashamed about it. And just actually starting having those conversations, a lot of women talking to me were like, oh, but you're exposing us. And I'm like, no, this is exactly why we're talking about it, is because there's not enough encouragement and really focusing on issues that we need to look at health issues, look at sanitary pads, see how inaccessible it is for a lot of people, and how that affects their lives, their daily lives, their careers, education. At the end of the day, a lot of girls don't actually go to school because of this shame attached to it, and they end up falling out of school, affecting the entire careers and livelihoods.
Well, our statistics in Zimbabwe do say that 62% of our female pupils miss school due to lack of sanitary pads, and 26% stay at home due to heavy flows, and 20% miss school due to their periods. But talking about exposing, and I'm wondering now, as we're talking, why somebody would say they were being exposed. And I'm feeling a bit exposed right now, because what this is doing is putting my intimate health issues out there, and talking about them publicly. Do you think that there could have been another way of having this discussion without putting it out there as vividly and as graphically as you did?
Like, sometimes you really do need that visual impact to start up the conversation and make you feel like, okay, this is an issue and we need to address it. We can't just walk away like covering our eyes, like, okay, we're not seeing this, we're just ignoring it. You know, this is in your face, and that's the whole idea.